Glad we could make it. Perfect. Ready for Frank About Health? We're ready to talk honestly. This is Frank About Health. Let's get real.
Hey everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Frank About Health right here on E360 TV, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Today, I welcome back with pleasure Dr. Dale Atkins, who had been on Frank About Health last October, where we had so much discussion on her book, The Turquoise Butterfly. And I'm proud to say that even though there was no direct connection, that shortly after then, she was on the Today Show promoting the very same book. And from what we're going to hear about, we're going to see what things have been going on since those appearances, and then really give that secret ingredient to this episode, which is her upcoming, her book that has just been released, which we're going to also allow you to pre-order or post-order, depending on when you're watching the show. So that way you would be able to be enjoying the continuance of her child developmental psychology approach to storytelling. Is that the best assessment I have for you, Dale?
I think that's a wonderful assessment. Frank, it's so nice to be back with you, and thank you for having me back on your show. It's always a joy talking about you, talking about whatever we talk about, which are so many topics with you. And I really like the way you framed that as the child developmental approach to storytelling. Exactly. I love that. Thank you.
Oh, you are very welcome. I think what I have learned, especially in the last 6 months, is that a lot of healthcare in general can only really be communicated person to person, especially with all the disruptions that we have seen in our social system, in our hospital systems and whatever, through narratives and storytelling, because that's how when people can resonate with what issues we are dealing with. A few weeks ago, I had Dr. Terry Mulligan, who was giving me the entire business model of the healthcare system, profit versus mortality. And it blew my mind. And I said, wow, so the common thread that Frank About Health has been pursuing for now, going on 5 years, is being able to bring everyone together and make everyone aware that when they are talking about their healthcare, they're talking about being a representative of something that is affecting many people. And it's unfortunate that the system is designed where you look at everything on a case-by-case basis, and sometimes the previous cases may resemble the future cases, but there doesn't seem to be any correlation building, because is your insurance going to pay for it, or is it going to be taken care of through out-of-pocket? It's not.
And that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? It's so true, particularly with some of the newer treatments. And I really like what you say about the disruption and storytelling and anecdotal evidence, because I think when people are giving their stories and they're also backed by science, it's really very persuasive. So you have much more of an argument to present if your insurance company is saying, well, no, I don't think so. And most people will just stop right there. And, so much of what you're committed to is really giving people the tools in how to be the disruptor, or how not to say, not to accept, I'm sorry, but say, no, wait a minute, and just have the fortitude to hang in there and really get other people to participate and change a system.
Absolutely. And that's why you're welcome back to Frank About Health, because you are a member of the community that is advocating for a more secure way of health within our society. And I think you made that abundantly clear when you talked about in the Turquoise Butterfly, the whole generational bond between a grandmother and her granddaughter, and how I'm already beginning to see the impact of that in my own life with my father, particularly with how he's relating to my nephews who are his grandsons. So I think that when I had found out about the new book that we are going to discuss on this show, I saw it had another aspect with nature, and I do want to discuss more of that later. But I guess I want to learn the crossover between intergenerational relationships and nature itself, how children are impacted. So now we're going from the relationships within the family lineage to our relationship with the universe, or with the other creatures that we live with, you know?
That's exactly right. And I would actually expand it. Before we were talking, recording, you
Yeah.
asked what this journey has been, and
Yeah.
you nailed it right there. So many things that I've learned since the Turquoise Butterfly came out, and I've been talking with people all over the world about it, and mostly about the story, but as well as what is the benefit of being with a younger person and what is the benefit of being with an older person, whether or not you're related. It doesn't have to be your blood grandparent. It can
Right.
be an elder in your
Yeah.
family or an elder in your community. And how does that benefit the elder and how does it benefit the younger person? And
Yeah.
so much of that actually can take place out in nature. And I've been noticing, and people have been sharing with me some of the things that they will talk about. I just yesterday was speaking to a group of elders, and they were saying, "Well, what do you do when your grandchildren or the youngsters that you care about are states away, and all over the country or all over the world?" And
Yes.
it came to me, speaking of nature, because nature is so healing, and I'm glad we'll talk about that later. So
Yes.
if you look out your window, I'm sitting in Connecticut, you're sitting in New York. If a
Mhm.
grandchild is sitting in Arizona, that's the conversation. What do you see out your window? Well, one's going to see a desert, one's going to see a city, maybe with a tree across the river, but you're going to see the river if I remember where you live. And I'm
Yes.
going to talk about the trees and the blossoms that are just coming into a northeastern spring. And then I'm going to talk about the animals. Well, what animals are you seeing out there? What birds are you seeing? So you can have a conversation about anything intergenerationally. And sometimes bringing in nature is the starting point because you may not know so much about what's going on with the younger person's day to day life. You may
Right.
not have been in touch with them for weeks, but in
Right.
the present moment, what can you see? Or maybe you just got a plant, or maybe you just arranged some flowers, or you're looking at a book about nature and then you're talking about it. So whatever the connection is, and my
Yeah.
point is that intergenerational connection with patience, perseverance, more listening than talking,
Yes.
really paying attention are the qualities that we see really cement intergenerational relationships. So
Yeah.
that if the little girl is anxious, as was the story of Turquoise Butterfly, and her
Yes.
grandmother is very bold and adventurous, what does the grandmother have to do? The grandmother has to present herself as patient and
Yes.
calm and providing a safe place.
Yes.
And very often we need another person. It could be a younger person or an older person who walks with us literally in
Yes.
nature or who wheels us literally into nature. And we feel safe because we are with this person. And then we take it from there. What are
Yes.
all of those benefits? So one of the things that I learned while talking about and presenting the turquoise butterfly is
Hmm.
just the multi dimensions that we have and the multi possibilities of what happens in connection between an elder and a younger. And
Yes.
one of the things that you and I didn't speak about, which has come to the fore while I've been out talking about it,
Right.
is that at a moment in time, an older person and a younger person can have a tremendous impact on each other. And you don't really know how that's going to happen, when it's going to happen, but
Hmm.
it can happen. And it can last for a few hours, it can last for a month, it can last for 2 years.
Right.
But it's a moment in time. And that memory of that connection will probably stay with both participants forever because
Yeah.
it was so impactful. And I
Right.
like to say that because sometimes people say, well, I have a fractured relationship, or I haven't spoken to my grandson in so long, or, there was this nice neighbor of mine, but I never really found out, much about her life. Number one, it's not too late because
Right.
everything transforms.
Yes.
Everything is temporary. which is why I use the butterfly image, one of the reasons. And
Right.
also, we are changing. We are not stagnant. So a kid who we couldn't relate to perhaps when they were 5 or 6 or 7 might be very relatable now that they're 14 or 15. And, or maybe that they're 14 and 15, they don't want anything to do with you. But when they're 21, they're going to come back. And you have been available and you have been sharing information or just sharing what you've been up to.
Yes.
And sometimes these relationships are not exactly equal. There's a little bit more on one side at one time, a little bit more on the other side at another time. But the idea is, how can we balance them out? And so I had thought about what was happening in our society. You and I actually did speak about this, with so many children feeling anxious, depressed, isolated, trying to deal with the bullying, trying to make sense of where they could feel safe because of social media, because of constantly being online, the competition, the comparison, all of that. And it was really degrading the experience of childhood. And one of the things that was so obvious to me, because as you know, I love being in nature and I take nature walks every day. And I really try, even in COVID, when I was doing therapy with patients online, I would take my phone out in the garden or out in a park and find a very quiet place and talk with my patients in the outdoors. And that was so successful because half of the session they'd say, well, what's going on over there? Or show me the ducks, or show, it's like, I said, I have nothing to do with this improvement of mood. It's all about nature. And that was partially true. So I wanted to try and understand how this could impact children and what happens when kids are in nature that really enhances their life and their life experience. It enhances how they do in school. It changes how they are relating to people. It changes themselves, their sense about themselves and their confidence. So I started thinking about that separately.
Right.
Then I took a walk in the park. It was in June of 2020. COVID was upon us.
Rampant. Yes.
And people were masked, and the only place I could really go was outdoors. Fortunately, I don't live in a place with an elevator, so I could get out and in as often as I needed to without worrying about other people. And I was taking a walk. There were very few people in the park that day, and I came upon a little fawn that's a baby deer, and it was stuck. It was trapped in a pond, and it was clearly in distress. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And the tide was coming in to the pond. And I said, this animal is not going to make it. And then I tried to think, how am I going to be able to get down into this pond? And it's bordered by a wall of rocks. And I literally couldn't go down. I don't know what I thought I was going to do. I certainly wasn't going to be able to pick it up. And it was running frantically back and forth, and trying to get out. Then I turned a little bit and I practically bumped right into the mother, a doe, who was in panic. And she looked at me as if she was beseeching me to do something. And then she would look in the pond, and then she'd look at me, and then she'd look at the pond. And it was very clear to me that there was a communication happening. First of all, she was a lot closer to me than she would have been normally. And she was, in my language, asking me to do something.
Yes.
So that was the genesis of the deer story. And then what happened to me and the deer is the story. And instead of happening to me, I made it about two friends, two little children who were going into the park. And then it was all about their experiences and sharpening their ability to focus, sharpening their senses.
In contrast with the turquoise butterfly, between the grandparent and the grandchild, now it is two children of probably approximate age that are interfacing together with nature. And we, the reader, whether you're an adult already or yourself a child, is observing it and learning from that experience.
Exactly. And I wrote it as a love letter to nature. That's why it's dear,
Awesome.
dear. Dear, dear, I ask questions and and I'm saying what the children are experiencing. And then the children ask this mythical deer, we see the bee, we see the hive. Were you ever stung by a bee? Dear, dear, what are you feeling? Where is your fawn? We see the
Yes.
nest, but the nest is empty. Where are you?
Yes.
And it's all about the questions. Do you hear the bird? And the whole thing was illustrated by the same person whose name is Amelina Jones. And she's the same person who illustrated the Turquoise Butterfly. And so I sent her pictures of this place called Greenwich Point Park.
Yes.
And it's also referred to as Todd's Point in Old Greenwich, Connecticut. And I would send her pictures, and everything in the book is actually an illustration of what's actually in the park. And so you'll be happy to know that in a few weeks, I'll be reading the book to a bunch of children here in Greenwich Point Park at the site, in Hamilton, at the room where it happened, at the site where it happened, and try to, and then take a nature walk with them, give them little magnifying glasses so they can look and see closely, give them binoculars so they can really see wherever and just bring it close, and then listen and try and do all kinds of exercises with listening more carefully, with paying attention, to noticing, to the touch, touching the trees, feeling the differences in the bark.
Yes.
And just activating senses. Because one of the things that we've now unfortunately been able to know, which is fortunate that we can try and do something about it, is that there's been constant degradation of children's ability to really notice, to focus, and to heighten their senses. We want to heighten the senses. If you don't use them, you're going to lose them.
Exactly.
And so by getting children out in nature, it's not just the reactivation of senses, but it's really building emotional resilience and lowering stress.
Yes.
And doing these kinds of things with them that make them see that they can focus, that they can become independent, become confident. There are so many psychologists who are studying the value of nature in children, also as an antidote for so much screen time, and to be able to understand how children, when they are not being helicoptered by their parents and not prevented from going out and exploring.
Right.
It takes some balance to walk on a log, and it takes skill to figure out how you're going to go on this trail when there's something blocking it. And it takes sometimes talking to friends of how can we help this deer, which is what happens in the book. And so what I wanted to do was also, it promotes physical health. I mean, you're breathing, you're using your muscles. And when you make that connection with nature and you look at nature differently, you are building the skills for empathy and compassion. And those skills translate to human relationships.
Absolutely. And you know what I picked up just now from the whole description of what the motivation behind the book is that you're addressing the issue where people, like you said, the degradation of social media or whatever other distractions are affecting our children today. You're providing a lesson that's even more powerful in learning resiliency as early as possible. Because we're living in times right now that even as an adult, if you don't have that resiliency skill set that you could have adapted when you were younger, it can be a struggle. Even
Absolutely,
when the struggle
Frank.
is not yours, it's been inherited by the media or by other people's challenges.
And you can foster and encourage children to think creatively and to use their imaginations. You see a stick in the woods or in a park or on the street at where there's a little tree, and you see a branch that fell, and to one kid it's going to be a magic wand, to another kid it's going to be the mast of a boat, to another child they use their imagination. And you can do that when you're in that environment. You put some rocks together and you make a river, or you make a boat, and you find a leaf, and that becomes something on, like a sail. But you can't do that if you're not out there without the pressure, without this, and just being able to imagine, what could this be? What do you see? When you look into the sky, and everybody can do this. You look in a cloud, what do you see? Some people will see a person, some people will see an animal, some people will see whatever they see. It's like the whole world is like a Rorschach test if you look at it, right?
Yeah.
And if you give yourself an opportunity to imagine and to play and to be playful. And when you do this intergenerationally, I find that very often the inhibition is dropped, the inhibition with an older person, because it's fun. When you hear in the fall, you hear the leaves, crackling under your feet, and you start to shuffle them. Well, that makes a different sound. It's also a different sensation. When you walk along a sandy beach and you take your shoes off, you're noticing the texture. You feel you're part of nature. Yes. We are all part of nature. We just separate ourselves from it. And instead of being apart, we have to be apart. And when we feel apart, we feel compassion. We notice the life cycles and the seasons. Yes. And that's very, very important, because kids need to know that things change. This is the same theme from Turquoise Butterfly, that this moment is a precious, cherished moment. It will change. Yes. And the resilience is, how am I dealing with this moment? And that will affect how I deal with the next moment. So I'm learning skills that I'll integrate, and that will become how I deal with and live in the world.
Beautiful. And from what I'm picking up with everything that you've been saying, is that all of this came out of you after completion of the Turquoise Butterfly and going through your various appearances and readings and stuff like that. And then this became a byproduct of that, which then led to Dear Dear, right? Or was it something
not exactly
new? Okay.
The theories I knew, and I've been, I'm a child developmentalist, so I've been watching what's been happening with our young generation. Yes. This event happened in 2000, or maybe it was 2001. It was during COVID and nobody was wearing masks. I mean, everybody was wearing masks. Nobody had
2000 and 2001. Yes.
So that's when that was. Turquoise Butterfly. My mother died. She's the central character in the book, as you recall. My mother died 6.5 years ago. And my having that epiphany about the book about her was 3 years after her passing. And so it was about the same time, actually, because she died just at the last days of 2019. And this the encounter with the deer was just a few months later. But I said, that would be a great children's book. But I didn't think about it then. I was very busy with Turquoise Butterfly. Right. And then when I would get stuck on Turquoise Butterfly, I would kind of make a couple of notes, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing that it would be called Dear Dear, just a bit, because I thought the story was such a lovely story. But at that point, it was still my story. It was about me and getting, kind of rescuing the little deer and the relationship with the mother deer and the baby deer. So it didn't become a book. It really became a book in my mind when I was trying to sell Turquoise Butterfly. And it was already a book, but I hadn't sold it yet. I hadn't published it yet. Right. And then I was, I needed something to do. So I started working on Dear Dear. And so I would say that was kind of simultaneous, but the lessons that have come from the Turquoise Butterfly have really, really been relevant to Dear Dear in ways that I had no idea. And I've been reading Dear Dear a little bit. I have a few copies myself, but they're not out there. Right. And people have been very responsive to the points that we've been saying.
Yes.
The other day on Sunday, I was at the New York Botanical Gardens talking about dear, dear, reading dear, dear, and what a magnificent place. And all of the parents who were there were very excited about dear, dear. And because they realize and appreciate how valuable it is to get, and these are all urban kids, to get into green space, to really allow children to just go at their own pace and stop and look. Usually when kids are in the city and they're walking to school, there are trees, there are flowers in some lots, but they're rushing. Everybody's rushing. They're rushing to school. They're rushing to practice. They're rushing here. They're rushing there. Yes. And so when you're in a park or in a space where you're not rushing, you have the ability to pay attention.
Yes. Wow. I'm having an epiphany right now just listening to that whole description, because it almost as if that we were destined to do this show at this time, because I have seen in the past week when I have been caring for my father who's in the hospital right now, that I'm identifying with him on a level much more deeper than I have in the past. But what is awakening to my awareness, I guess it's my advocacy work on Frank About Health, but it's also my inner compassion and knowledge of the human mind. And when I see him in a vulnerable spot, he's actually more transparent and more open with me now than he's ever been. And when I do feel that, what would you call it, transparency or authenticity or vulnerability, that's the word.
Vulnerability.
I feel so relaxed. I don't feel as though I have to defend myself or that, why are you acting this way? No, I feel like we're on the same page. We're on the same wavelength. So
it's safe. It's safe. You are providing a safety for him.
Yes.
And in doing so, he is feeling safe to be vulnerable. He also may be too exhausted to put up his normal front. Right. And I think that when we see someone who is in a compromised position as he is, we can respond. We have to choose how we respond. And you're choosing to respond with compassion and being vulnerable yourself. There are studies when people talk with each other, their tone of voice is usually matched. So if I start whispering to you, you'll probably start whispering to me. And if I get louder, you'll probably get louder. We also notice that with emotions, when people are trying to connect with each other, an empathic response is to mirror where they are and how they are emotionally. So if someone is crying with you, you may not cry, you may, but if you look like this, that's probably not a mirroring response. But if you move a little closer or you just allow yourself to be open, so that the crying or the sadness or whatever that emotion is that is breaking someone's heart, you can try to be there for them, because you may tap into a time when you had sadness, so that the emotion is something that you can be vulnerable to and therefore be present. And that's kind of, I think, what you're describing with your dad. You don't have to be defensive. You don't have to say, am I good enough? You don't have to do anything, because that's not in the room at this moment. What's in the room at this moment is a frail man and a comforting, perhaps fearful son or sad son, because you're seeing something, he's seeing something. You may be talking about it, you may not. But what you know is that together, it's a little easier. Whatever's happening at that moment is easier when you are aligned emotionally.
Yes. And then yet, because he is going to be 95 in August, he has the energy still, even with the fatigue and other things that are going on, of a 60-year-old. He's joking with the nurses, sometimes in different languages, because he speaks 7 of them. And,
lovely. Oh my goodness, how fortunate.
Yeah. And
he still has his inner being coming out, even though his body is frail. He still has that spark, and fortunately he can tap into it and he can bring it out there. And that's a life force.
Correct.
That is a life force.
And then therefore that tells me like what your book, Dear Dear, is about is that he's relating to the nature of individuals around him
Yes.
that are engaging him and bringing him around.
Yes.
That it makes me think that regardless of whatever any prognosis is based on lab results or whatever, that will that's still there can prolong things if that becomes the holistic treatment, correct?
Absolutely. That's an attitude. You know, people talk about how can two people with exactly the same diagnosis and very similar histories have two such different life paths. And
Right.
very often we talk about this when people are suffering, when people have had trauma, whenever, you know, there's any kind of horror going on, we say, how did this person survive with joy, alive, and with a positive attitude? And how did this person just feel that the world is almost over? And this is not a judgment. This is just an observation. And I think that when we do have an attitude that brings us a positive engagement, and this can have to do with approaching death. How is our attitude about what is next? That attitude is what is felt in the room with everybody else who's there.
That's right.
And we are then there as the caregiver to kind of reflect that attitude. Can we also be positive? Can we also be open? Can we also be honest?
Yes.
And get, and still be honest with our own feeling. But I do think what you're saying has been proven over and over and over again, where there are people who will say, I just have to get through this day, or just have to get through that test, and then I know that I'll be able to do this. And somehow they can, and they astound people.
Exactly.
There's something about the human spirit. And you talked about your father connecting to people, their human nature.
Yes.
And we're talking about nature.
In this case, we all know that with something like cancer, there is a termination date of sorts, but we can at least increase the longevity a little bit with our spirit.
And even if we can't increase the longevity, we can increase the quality of our life. We can enhance the quality of our life with our attitude, with the people around us, with the things we read, with the things we hear, with what we listen to, what we are enjoying, the memories that we are sharing. This can enhance the quality of our life for however long our life is, which is why I think it's really important to get outdoors when you can. You've seen some of my nature walks, and some of them I'm all bundled up. And I have this attitude of there's no bad weather, there's just bad clothes. And so, you have to get the appropriate clothing for the weather. Now,
Correct. Well,
it was storming and I was all bundled up.
Oh my God. Well, it's interesting how we go from your developmental storytelling and actually see evidence of what you've been writing about affecting me and my father, who's in his 90s. But there is no age barrier when it comes to Dear Dear. That I can feel. So for that reason, I'm just going to show everyone the cover of the book right now, even though on the cover we see the deer in the background and we see the two children that are discussed in the book. I'd like you to now spend like the next couple minutes explaining how this could be transferable to children over the age of 50.
You mean the children inside all of us, right? The inner child.
Correct.
I think that I believe in my depth that what works with the children works with the adults. I will share with you that when we're finished on the phone today, I am going to the park with a group of nurses from our local hospital. And we are going, and we are, as part of a wellness program, we are going to be out in the park, and we are going to be doing a few exercises, but mostly we're just going to be engaged with nature. None of these nurses is a child. They are all seasoned professional adults. And we are hopefully going to have an opportunity to relate within nature, relate to nature, the birds, the wind, the trees, the flowers, the shrubs, the water, and each other.
Yes.
And so what happens, and this is proven so many times, that it has a wonderful effect. Being in nature, being in the trees has a wonderful effect on our concentration, as I said, on our attention, but really on our cognition, because it changes our brain.
Yes.
It really changes. We notice changes in blood pressure that generally drops. We notice differences in breathing. It regulates our breathing. And when you're in nature with people you like, also you can notice a kind of a collective thing. And if you're bold and you want to sing in nature, you can sing like with the birds, or you can make bird sounds, and you feel a lightness. Your whole body kind of, you can feel the tension leave. It's physically better when people who are older go out into nature, because they're generally breathing fresher air. And even if you have allergies, and right now it's kind of it's allergy season, do what you can do, and don't make yourself sick being out there, but do what you can do. If it's very high pollen count, well, don't go that day, or take something that might modulate a response. But for most of us, I really do believe that our physical being is much better when you're breathing deeply, when you are walking at a pace, and that pace can be a slow, meditative pace.
Right.
It's a wonderful, wonderful work of Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away. He's a Vietnamese monk, and he wrote prolific walking meditation. And, many people are in the park doing their laps, and that's great. They're getting in shape.
Yes.
But I actually suggest to people that that's one type of engagement with nature. Another type of engagement with nature is really being mindful of how you are walking, or just take 5 minutes and be totally quiet.
Right.
And listen.
Yes.
Don't use your device.
Yes.
Unless you're using it to identify a leaf or a bird. So,
Yes.
so those are ways that people benefit. The other is that, again, like with children, it is a constant reminder that everything is temporary, that we are in the seasons of life, and the continuity with a world that is going crazy, to be able to recognize that there is a season for everything. And there will be growth, and there will be death, and there will be growth, and there will be life, and there will be death, and there will be growth. And to constantly remind that. And when you're in a park, generally you see certain things that are finished blooming and things that are coming into bloom. We have birds' nests. We have little birds. It's spring, so we have little birds being fed. We have other birds that are making their nests.
Yes.
Watching life.
Yes.
That is larger and so much more connected. When you think of a root system, and you think of how deep it goes and how connected all of these trees are. You could have a tree over here with root systems that go miles away. We see that with the aspens, in Colorado.
Right.
You see a bird that has eaten a berry, and then it poops it somewhere else, and you have that berry tree growing up over there, because everything is in movement. Everything is constantly in motion. The other thing that I really like to do with adults when I take them into nature is give them time to be on their own and sit with a rock, a moving body of water, the wind in the tree, and just sit in that place and think of a problem that they're having in their life. One problem.
Yeah. And
just be present to see what comes up in the solution.
Awesome.
For many, many people, walking into nature is how they solve their problems, because immediately you are aware that the world is so much larger than you, that there's so much going on. It's not about you, but this problem may be able to be solved by watching something in nature. by
Yes.
watching an animal and relate to a different animal and
Yes.
just observe. I do think that nature is our best teacher. I also think it is our best healer.
I
So
agree.
the book is for children, but the book is about life and engagement with nature because we need it so desperately now, Frank. We really need
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. And so, all you children out there, including myself and Dale, you can access this QR code right on your screen and get this book, which has been out since the 2nd of June. But I already have my copy because I'm discussing it on today's show. But that being said, I highly recommend it, just like I recommended the Turquoise Butterfly. But in all fairness, Dale, I'm going to have to say this is like not a sequel, but more of an addendum to the Turquoise
I
Butterfly.
love
I
that.
think they work in
Thank
hand in
you.
hand. You're very
You know,
welcome.
I didn't write them as such, but I'm noticing that they're much more connected than I
Yeah.
thought they were going to be. And many of the themes are similar, but looked at from a very different perspective. And I appreciate your making the connection. I think part of that connection also is because the illustrator is the same illustrator, and her take on nature and people is familiar.
Yes.
But I do agree with you. And that's another thing about writing the book. It wasn't my intention, but it became part of the actual event of writing the book. Yeah.
Any chance a third book is coming along the way? Not probably in the near future, but maybe over the next year or so?
I have an outline. You're funny to ask. You're sweet to ask. I've been watching the osprey, and I'm very, very intrigued by the osprey. The osprey were almost extinct in this part of New England, and a lot of that had to do with the eggs could not survive the pesticide that was being used, and so we were losing all of the osprey. And there was a very large group of activists who decided that they were going to conserve what was left and try to to kind of reinvite the osprey in a healthy environment and reinvigorate the osprey community. And just in the park that I've been referencing, I think there are maybe 7 or 8 nests. And just this year, there's a new nest. And so I'm very, very interested in the osprey. And I'm in my mind sketching out a book about a little girl who lives in the city, but there's a park nearby. And so I'm working on that. I didn't think I'd write children's books, but I'm loving it. I'm having such a good time that I actually don't think I'll write another book for adults. I'm having so much fun with the children's books.
Well, considering the way technology has been, if you do, it's probably going to be helped with artificial intelligence and other kinds of digital means rather than, when you're in school or when you're a young kid, you still like the comfort of a nice book you can touch and deal with. So,
well, I
you're
think that
playing
there's
in what makes you
nothing like being embraced
Yes,
by a book and having someone's loving arms around you reading that book.
absolutely.
And that's the intergenerational image, whether it's a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, a loving aunt or uncle. And I think that, reading, holding a book and seeing what you see, because the children look in the book and they see something that I didn't even think about. And then when I read a story with a child and I say, what do you see? And they may see something that isn't intrinsic to the story, but it becomes part of the story because of how they look at it. And I just love that.
Awesome. Wow. So then let me ask you, unlike the Turquoise Butterfly, is the connection very strong between these two kids?
It's a wonderful question. I think they become connected because of the way they look at nature together, the way they explore and discover together, but mostly because of how they creatively solve the problem to help the fawn out of distress. And when you are partnering with someone to solve a problem, particularly in this case, kind of life and death, you bond in a way that you might not. And so they become very connected But again, the story is not about the children.
Right.
It's about their experience, but the
With nature.
story is about nature and the healing power and the connecting power of nature.
Yes.
And how we can, as human beings, how we can be in service to nature without intruding upon it, without trampling it. You know, one of the scenes in the book, the children look under a rock. You may remember that. And I'm trying to find it. I'll show you if I have a moment.
Sure.
Here.
Yes.
There's the mother and the deer, and then the little kids trip over a rock. And they say, "Dear, dear, will you be back soon? As we head home, we trip over a rock. In the wet dirt, we find," I never know which way to go. There. "We find a world of bustling worms, ants, spiders, and slugs. Crickets and beetles scurry underneath. We wait and we discover. Then replace the rock so we don't disturb their important work. A bee zips by and lands on a cornflower for a sip of nectar. Butterflies flutter and spread their new wings." And then they proceed into the forest. Nice. So they could have left the stone turned over, but they appreciated that all this was happening underneath the stone. So their role was as steward of nature. And that's what I would love to develop. I would love to help develop a whole next generation of people who feel an obligation and a responsibility to be stewards of nature. That when you walk into some place, you leave with it, if not as undisturbed, then pretty much undisturbed.
Yes. So in order to do that mission of yours, have you already trying, besides speaking to the nurses today at that hospital, have you been also trying to communicate your books to educational institutions with, you know,
just starting? Absolutely. I'm speaking at a few more botanical gardens in their children's programs. I'll be in the Berkshires and I'll be in Greenwich, Connecticut at the Botanical Garden. I'm going to the children's museums to bring the book and the outdoors in. I'm going to some nature centers. And hopefully when school begins, I'll be speaking to school children about what we can do to really protect and help restore natural habitats, and that this is part of our responsibility because we are a part of the world.
Wow. So is there any plans that probably you would even like to develop relationships with public television like Sesame Workshop or Sesame Street? Probably even, I could see you reading it to Kermit the Frog, or probably even just children around him. I'm just kind of
sounds great. I hadn't thought of that, Frank. So thank you.
There seems to be a vision happening here. Maybe I'm the one that's seeing it, but
I love that vision. I love it. I would love nothing more. I love sitting around and reading to children, and their families.
Yes.
And giving them opportunities. Generally, after we do a reading, we'll do a craft. And for the Turquoise Butterfly, we were coloring butterflies. We were doing all kinds of stories about butterflies. We had the two wings, and on one wing would be, these are the things that make my butterflies flutter. And on the other wing would be, these are the things that give me strength. Because that was very much related to the butterfly book. And now with the deer, we have some images that we'll be coloring, but we also are going to do walks outside, gathering things, and then making a kind of collage together, because really in nature, it's, more people can do than what just one person can, but one person can do a lot. Yes. And then maybe leave it in nature, maybe make a collage on the ground, kind of like a mandala, and then just leave it. But also we've been doing things with what kids are finding in nature. And the other thing is that I have little stickers of creatures in nature, and we're doing fun things. We're doing fun things to make kids feel a part of nature.
That is nice. Do you find that, I gather Turquoise Butterfly was your first book, right? Or did you
My
do
first children's book.
first children's book? And
It's
this
my
is your
eighth book, but my first children's book. This is my second children's book.
Interesting. So the Turquoise Butterfly germinated some seeds that I see populating over the next 6 months or so. Maybe that's just my gut reaction, but I really
Well, I like your gut reaction.
I guess that's part of being frank. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, part of being frank.
Exactly. But
I love that.
I have this mission, as you already know from our first appearance together back in October. But I am really striving so hard, not just to advocate for different healthcare issues, especially with your domain with children's health, but it really worries me and concerns me about the way our healthcare system in our society has been, talk about degraded, I think almost eroded. And so what I've learned is that not just people out, in our age category, but even children themselves have to learn at such an early age now to be their own self-advocate for their health and their families and whatever. I think we've lived historically in a society where it was kind of understood we were kind of protected, but the way things have shifted in the last 2 years, the best protection is from within. And I think your books help germinate those seeds with children so that they understand their value even at the age of 5 or whatever.
We do know that children who spend more time in nature are more independent and develop more confidence. So if you need to be your own advocate, you need to be confident. You need to be able to understand the other person's perspective, and you need to be able to be clear about your own needs. And all of this getting into nature also is preventative so that we're less likely to become that sick if we're healthy and being in nature and moving our bodies and creating and imagining. And we are building inner resilience and confidence. And I believe that in order to be an advocate, you have to be confident, and you do need to be independent, and you need to be creative.
Absolutely. Well, we're about 3 minutes before we end, but do you have any words to share with the audience on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course, E360 TV of where you'll be speaking next, or if you're going to be on the Today Show again, or if you have any talking events, or other things that you would like to let people know where you'll be or how they can reach you?
Well, thank you. I just picked up my phone because I do have a little schedule here, if I can find it. I'm going to be on June 7th. I'm going to be at the Westport, Connecticut Library. There's a joint program with the Men's Club, the Senior Center, and the library, and I'll be presenting. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get this on time. Let's see. Oh, yes, here it is. I'm going to be at the Connecticut Children's Museum on June 13th, the Greenwich Audubon Society on June 14th, Fairfield University Bookstore on June 20th, and then I have several other engagements in different parts of the country. But I have a website, and where I'm going is generally there, and I'm also on Instagram at Dr. Dale Atkins. My website is www.drdaleatkins.com. So it's www.drdaleatkins.com. And I would love to come to people's schools. I would love to come to their botanical gardens. These are the kinds of, and I'd love to, yesterday I was speaking with an elder learning group. And I think that there is a message here that appears to be gratefully resonating with many people all over the world. And it has to do with connection. It has to do with patience. It has to do with not only connecting with humans, but also with the natural world, and how we can exercise our responsibility of being a part of nurturing each other and what is giving us life, what is allowing us. So I'd love to speak at different places. As far as the Today Show, I don't know. I don't have a plan to yet, but you never know.
Correct.
Or other shows.
Yeah.
I was on two television shows in the Hartford area just last week, and so I'm very happy to come in person if I can, or do what we're doing, which has developed an intimacy. I mean,
Yeah.
we haven't met in person, but I feel as if we're friends, and that's a really
Yes,
nice
I
thing.
feel the same way too. I do. Thank you so much, Dale, for being here today for the second time.
Thank you.
More to come.
Thank you for your support.
Oh, and thank you for yours. If you know what I mean in terms of my father and stuff like that, it's been very supportive. All right. So everybody remember, if you've already read The Turquoise Butterfly, you need to check out Dear Dear. Here again is the QR code for it. I will be back next week with another fresh episode of Frank About Health. I want to thank you again, Dale, for being here, and thank all of you out there for watching. If you need to reach me for content or comments or questions, that's frankrharrison1@gmail.com or on my social media. So see you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.